There is no TNA review this week, but I didn't want to leave you without going over some of the stuff that happened on this week's episode of TNA Impact. So Cora Jade made her in-ring debut for TNA. She faced a woman named Han. I think that's how you pronounce her name. If not, I do apologize. But Han is a top-tier talent. I've seen her a couple of times in TNA, and she's really good. And the TNA faithfuls are begging for her to be signed by TNA. So hopefully that happens in the future. But Cora Jade did beat Han, and she's really rubbing some of the knockouts the wrong way. She's had face-to-face confrontations with Masha Slamovich. She kind of picked a fight with Zaya Brookside last night. She is not liked in that knockouts division, but Cora Jade being a part of TNA, I feel like it's going to be a plus for the knockouts division right now with this NXT and WWE crossover. I'm interested to see how they utilize Cora Jade in TNA. Ace Austin versus Wrasslin could have been a phenomenal match if we didn't have Tyson and Tyreek interfering. The match was great nonetheless, but man, Wrasslin and Ace Austin, I feel like were tearing it up in the ring until those two came out. Wrasslin did get the victory. I'm not sure what we're doing with Wrasslin, Tyson, and Tyreek while they're showing up in TNA. The Rascals did come out after the match to kind of help Ace Austin, but I'm interested to see, is Ace Austin going to be like a third member-ish of the Rascals right now with Wrasslin having Tyreek and Tyson? I don't know, but I like this build between the Rascals, Ace Austin, Wrasslin, Tyson, and Tyreek. It's really interesting that this is playing out on TNA television, but as the weeks go on, I'm sure things will unravel just a little bit more. Mustafa Ali is back in TNA Wrestling. He has signed with TNA Wrestling, and on this week's episode of TNA Impact, it was his in-ring return, and he faced Laredo Kid, and I thought that match was great. Laredo Kid, Mustafa Ali put on a stellar match. I need to see them again in another match. I don't know if it's for the X Division title or whatnot, but put these two gentlemen in another match, and it was great. It's great to see Mustafa Ali back in TNA. It's also his character, his like campaign presidential character is top tier. It's something that I have never seen before, and I think this is really good and will really work for TNA. I know they may be doing mustering up Mustafa Ali versus Mike Santana. Give it to me. Give me Mustafa Ali versus Mike Santana. That match will cook. I'm excited for him to be back in TNA, and I can't wait to see what they do with him over the next couple of months. So it looks like Steph D-Lander is the digital media champion and not Mace Warner. I don't know what's happening here. They have to figure it out because whatever was supposed to happen, PCO, TNA, it just didn't work out for those two parties. So I believe Steph D-Lander is the digital media champion, but right now Sami Callihan and Mance Warner are in a feud. They were fighting at ringside. They were fighting in the crowd. There's something brewing between these two, and I think it does revolve around the digital media championship. I don't know if Steph D-Lander is just going to give Mance Warner the title, but it's brewing. And I'm here for it. I'm going to be patient and I'm not going to judge because I think they're trying to cook something up. They have to rework a lot of their plans because of what initially was supposed to happen between PCO, the Digital Media Championship, and what TNA had planned for it as PCO had made his exit from TNA Wrestling. Also, something that was not advertised, but it did happen, was a tag team match that was kind of set up in the opening segment of TNA Impact with Nick Nemeth, his brother Ryan, and First Class AJ Francis and KC Navarro. But in that tag team match, now, before we move to that tag team match, I just want to say that Nick Nemeth is a face in TNA Wrestling, and his brother Ryan is kind of showing some heelish, vibe. So I don't know if we're setting up for a Nick Nemeth, Ryan Nemeth feud. I don't know. I'm not putting that in the atmosphere, but it kind of gives me that sense. But in this tag team match, Nick Nemeth actually was the person that kind of finished the match off, but Ryan tagged himself in and got the pin, and he started to gloat at the end, and Nick Nemeth was kind of standing behind with this confused face on. So that's why I'm thinking maybe they're planting the seeds of a Ryan and Nick feud, but also having Ryan and Nick as a tag team in TNA is great. the TNA tag team division needs a little work. We got the Rascals, we got the Hardys. If we have Nick Nemeth and Ryan Nemeth in there, that would be great. We got, AJ Francis and KC Navarro of First Class. We also have Saint and Center and the Good Hands. So we're working on getting the tag team division back to where it was originally. So having Nick and Ryan in there, I think is a good choice. And moving Nick from the world title and immediately putting him into the tag team division keeps him relevant. And I like when TNA does things like that. And lastly, we got to talk about the Northern Armory. We got to talk about Josh Alexander and Eric Young versus the Northern Armory, or Saint and Center. Josh Alexander was the old head of the Northern Armory, but we all know Josh Alexander is stepping away from TNA Wrestling and is going to explore free agency. So this was somewhat maybe his last match. And it was a tag team match. He teamed with Eric Young, and Eric Young actually turned on Josh Alexander, something that I was not expecting at all. So he turned on Josh Alexander, and Eric Young aligned himself with Saint and Center, and they're like the new Northern Armory. And I'm interested. I'm interested to see how this plays out. I'm interested if we get one more match with Josh Alexander as well. I'm saying this match down here was potentially his last match, but do we get a Josh Alexander versus Eric Young? Or do we just leave it like it is? And Josh Alexander walks out of TNA as a face. I don't know, but this week's episode of TNA Impact, I'm giving it a 7.5. It had some slow moments. It had some great moments. I'm excited for next week's episode and the live episode coming up February 20th.